Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Jeannie Allen, Yass Foundation Director and founder and CEO of the Center for Education Reform.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much. We are here at Forbes on Fifth Avenue, thanks to our amazing media partner, Forbes Media. And we are streaming live to people all over the country, maybe even the world, because the people in this room, the semifinalists for the 2022 Yass Prize, have demonstrated a commitment beyond all other amazing education providers in providing sustainable, transformational, outstanding, and permissionless education to children typically unserved by the traditional system. So first, give yourselves a round of applause. I'm going to just say brief remarks. We have a phenomenal program today. Everyone watching and participating will be able to hear from every one of our 32 semifinalists and why they were chosen to be in this competition. It was a tough competition. It's gone on for 6 months. We started with over 2,700 applications from around the country. We had applications from 49 states, and that 50th one, we're coming for you next year. The semifinalists represent 34. It has been 64 represent 34, excuse me, and the 32 represent 24. It has been an amazing experience for us. We have learned so much as we go, and our aim is not just to have a prize, but to truly build a movement. I'd like to introduce you to Janine and Jeff Yass, the founders of this award, who are with us today, off to the left. With vision and foresight, they have helped build this from nothing, from a $1 million prize during COVID to reward someone who was doing great work, just like first responders in healthcare, first responders in education. And after, as many of our alumni in the room know, after that award happened here last year, almost the exact same day, they realized how many more people around the country were doing incredible work for students. And when I just say work, just for everyone watching, this is not just work. It's actually developing, iterating, testing, revising, doing it all over again, just like entrepreneurs in every other field. And we have not treated educators like the entrepreneurs that they are and need to be, which is why our kids are not where they should be across the world. And so that is our aim. That is your aim. With your help, we will continue to grow more of you. And you in this room who will all be taking home prizes. And leading up to tonight when the finalists are announced and the grand prize winner of the Yass Prize is announced, it does not, as Caroline Allen, the vice president of the Yass Prize, said in Miami, it does not stop here. It is just the beginning. So thank you so much for being here. We look forward to the rest of the day. Good luck, and we'll see you soon.
Now moderating our first panel, Laura Cassidy.
Can everybody hear me? Yeah. Great. I don't think I need this one too. Well, what a great day, right? Congratulations to everybody. Thank you to Jeannie and Janine and Jeff. And we have our panel here, the role of parent power and permissionless education. I'm Dr. Laura Cassidy. I'm a surgeon by training and an interloper in many educational circles. I'm the co-founder and the board chairman of Louisiana Key Academy. We were a finalist last year, and as Jeannie said, this is not the end, this is just the beginning for all of y'all. We're gonna talk today. I'm gonna ask each of y'all a question. You'll answer briefly, and you'll also tell us a little bit about you. I'm gonna start with you, Troy. Troy Monroe, he's with Jamoki in Hartford, Connecticut. You have 3 campuses, and one is Jamoki Academy Honors at the Hartford Conservatory. This is a real specialty school. You give your parents a choice that is usually not available. Tell us about the parents of these students and how they are involved in their child's education, and what are the dreams of the parents for these children?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So our parents have great dreams for their scholars, our scholars. They want them to be successful. They want them to participate in a number of enrichment activities. We offer a number of arts offerings at the Hartford Conservatory to include orchestra, band, chorus, the theater arts, and so we want to be able to expose, and our parents want our children to be exposed to everything that they can be exposed, so that when they become young adults, they can make the proper choices as they move on to go on to hopefully greater success. Ultimately, we want them to go on to some of the best high schools, and many of our scholars do, within the state, and ultimately to college, and come back and share their experiences with those that come behind them.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Pastor Wade Moore with Urban Prep. That's in Wichita, private school in Wichita, Kansas. Your school prides itself on the school's creed, where there is talk of respect, responsibility, and elevation of oneself. So many parents are looking for schools that have strong values and positive cultures. So please tell us about the parents at your school and the parents that are on the waiting list.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor to be here from Wichita, Kansas. Wow, wow, wow. We really believe in giving our parents power. One of the things that I've been talking about and sharing with others is that I personally meet with every family. I want to get to know them. I want to get to know their story. I want to get to know what are the goals for your children, and personally meet with every one of them. And then after they enter urban prep, we create a culture of trust between the home and the school, a culture of love between us and the children. And we spend the first 2 weeks of school. We do minimum academic work the first 2 weeks of school. First 2 weeks of school is spent building that culture, teaching expectations, having parents involved. And the majority of our students, 99% of them, are on free lunch. They qualify, they're Title I students. And a lot of them come from single parent homes and people that really struggle. And one of our goals is by first grade, every student is reading. We've had children come to us, 6th graders, that read on first and second grade level, and we've managed to get them where they need to be. And so really connecting with the parents, giving the parents power in their child's educational journey, and then setting that standard of discipline, of tough love. I had some students, I remember one incident where we always call the parent, let the parent know what's going on. And the parent shows up and permissionless and giving parents power. And I'll tell the parent, there's a room back here if you need to go back there and discuss some things with your child. And that always works. And just giving parents power and giving them guidance in their child's educational journey.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, we have Kenesha Skaggs with SOAR. It's a microschool and tutoring center for students with autism, ADHD, and dyslexia. Tell us about your journey since 2012 and some of the struggles that you see parents consistently facing before they come to your organization.
Sure. So I started SOAR in my home 12 years ago or 11 years ago because I just wasn't happy with what I saw in the tutoring centers where I was working. I saw a lot of computer-based programs, and it was boring. It wasn't engaging the kids, and I thought something multi-sensory would really capture what students are looking for. And so when parents come to us, One thing that is super confusing to them is the IEP process. They're super intimidated by it. They don't always understand it. They're just signing on the dotted line. They don't know that those funds or that extra funding is being allotted to their child. They don't know they have rights and that they can ask for, documentation to see what progress the IEP is making. And so even with our tutoring program, we empower parents to ask questions in the school system to find out, where is my child with this IEP? Where is the progress? And they feel so much more confident after just having an advocate to help them with that.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, Bernita Bradley with Engage Detroit, also a micro school and parent advocacy network. This is a startup as a result of the pandemic. So can you tell us about yourself and the goal of Engage Detroit and how it grew?
Yeah, so thank you. I'm Bernita Bradley from Detroit, and literally I've been doing this work for about 15 years, the work of engaging parents to understand their power in selecting schools, like learn, apply, enroll. Make sure a school has what your child needs or even what you need, like walk through the building, right? Like understand the processes that are even affecting your children in the schools and how you can be engaged in that school. Because it's one thing to have your children in a space, but if they're not welcome to parent engagement, then you don't really want your child there. So I've been doing that for about 15 years, and then right before we started Engage Detroit, parents were tapping out because of the pandemic and everything that had even been going on prior to the pandemic. And while I'm a proponent for choice and parents knowing where they send their kids, I am not for parents tapping out, especially not in a city like Detroit where only 16% of our children were reading on grade level before the 3rd grade, and we literally just got a legal right to a basic education in March of 2020. And so we launched Engage Detroit, where we have coaches for parents to understand what it looks like to homeschool, and for those families to really be engaged to understand their rights, what policies impact their homeschooling journey, and to even engage other parents around this process, because you can't come and learn from us and then not give it to other parents, and create advocacy channels to change policy at our state level. To make sure that more families who choose this pathway have access to it and quality access to it, not just parents sitting at home because they have the power. The children were ready, the parents were the ones who needed the mind change and shift in understanding what it looks like to homeschool.
That's good. That's good.
Thank you. Okay, Portia down there in the red, Portia Green from Pritchard, Alabama. Pritchard Prep. You've been a parent volunteer, a teacher, and now the leader. Can you tell us how that role of being a teacher and a parent volunteer informed you in your leadership role at the school?
Absolutely. Good evening. So great to be here tonight. One of the things that I say that has taught me, and even concerning our parents, is that I am a parent, and I was a parent. I currently have a son at the school now. I share with parents that we are thankful that you are here with us. They chose to be at Pritchard Prep. It's a place that they didn't have to come. And in any relationship, there has to be trust. So my parents, I've worked with them, getting to know them one-on-one. I know all of them by name and all of their children by name. One of the questions I was asked during the accelerator is, what makes Pritchard Prep different? We are the only nationally accredited school in Pritchard, Alabama, but it is our culture and our relationships. Just because I wear a suit and put on the makeup and we stand there and have the title as a principal, I want them to know I'm in the trenches working for you. I'm here for you. I'm here for your children. And that is part of our mission, to educate students academically, spiritually, and culturally. And we teach character. We focus on character, developing them as they transition until middle school. I'll also share that there's a Bridge the Gap program that we have with parents. So even after they're leaving from Pritchard Prep, which goes to 5th grade, we have a Bridge the Gap where we help parents transition into middle school. So this is just not a, you're finished at 5th grade, but we're partnering with parents. So parents having power just because of, no matter what their social economic status is, they still need options. And for me, Pritchard Preparatory afforded my family affordable quality education.
That's great. So you all obviously are engaged with the parents, which is so important, and one of the big takeaways I got last year. But let's say there's a child or a parent that comes to you, and either it's one of your children, your students going to another school, or they're in another location, and they come to you and they say, you know, my child is not really getting what they need at the school. Is there a book I can read? Is there a place I can go? How do I learn more? For any of the panelists, or all of you, what would you tell them?
Yes, I'll start. So one, our parents already have so many resources connected to our program that if they're an IEP parent, if a student, you know, has an IEP, or if they're a parent who literally has mixed households, because some of our families have children in public school, in charter school, and then homeschooling. Like, what do you need to know to actually make sure that those places have what you need? So there's Michigan policies, there's Michigan Charter School Alliance, like I connect them to the resources. There's Michigan Family Alliance that helps with IEPs. Homeschool Legal Defense Fund that helps in the event that we don't understand something about policies connected, right? And so it's about making sure we as a program are well connected to engage families to make sure they have what they need, and that they know moving forward how to help somebody else.
I'll also answer on that. And we've had those cases at Pritchard Preparatory School, but we have a resource teacher that we're afforded because our students receive title funds, where that resource teacher is there 3 days a week. We also have an after-school tutoring program as well. And so we partner with parents. Students test and they're on or above grade level, but we also have a speech pathologist that comes out. So wherever there is a need, we do our best to meet parents, but there are resources that are provided to help students as well.
Kanisha?
Yeah, and you know, my mom homeschooled me through high school, and she doesn't have a teaching degree or a bachelor's degree. And so I think just when parents come in, we try to tell them that you don't need a teaching degree to homeschool your child. We try to let them know that you are the best teacher and you are the best advocate for your child.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, just building their confidence in that. And when I tell them my mom homeschooled me, I was dual enrolled, I went to college early. She didn't know calculus or pre-algebra, but all the programs were self-teaching. And so just teaching parents that you can teach yourself. So what we do is we offer free consultations for parents across the country. It doesn't matter where you are on how to homeschool, what to do to get started.
Awesome. And what I do, you know, I work with advocacy and policy and getting laws changed in the state that will help give children opportunities and really let parents know, because a lot of them think that they're just stuck, that man, I'm assigned to this bad school, we got a bad teacher, whatever, and really informing them that they have choices, that there are opportunities, and then how to navigate the system and getting those choices that they have active, bringing them in, educating them on different things, laws that have been established to give them choices. Once they find out that, wow, my child doesn't have to be stuck here, my child can move on, and then it's pretty exciting to them that my child can move from this failing school, and my child can learn how to read, my child can develop. And so it's just advocating and showing them different choices that they have.
And for us, I tend to connect parents with parents. In addition to all the things that you all have said, we're connecting parents with parents. I think that's what we do well at Jamoke Academy. And then beyond connecting parents with parents and having them have real conversations with one another, they can share their personal experiences about any one of their campuses at Jamoke Academy. And then taking it one step further, connecting them with our leaders, really trying to tap into what is missing, what was missing from your child's previous experience that we possibly can just tune into and offer. We have 2 campuses. We highlighted one of them that focused on the arts. The second campus focuses on STEM programming. So depending on where that scholar's interests are, we'll be able to tap into that and hopefully steer the parent in the right direction.
Can I just, I want to go back. Something I missed was when parents come, they don't know that this is a permissionless opportunity for them. And they'll come and they say, well, do I have to let the school district know? No, you don't. I'll take care of everything. This thing is permission. You just come on and we'll take it from there.
Empowering the parents.
Empowering the parents.
Okay, so we've got 2 minutes left. Say I've invited you to talk, and this is a group, and not the group it is, but it's a group of educators, organization leaders, and they want to know, what would you tell them? They're not doing a great job with their parents' power. What would you tell them? Some steps, some directives, some key things that they need to do to make sure that they are empowering their parents.
I would say create opportunities for parents to get involved in the decision-making process. As an example, we have parents on our board of trustees. They play a very active role, and they're learning about policy and instruction and all the things that make schools work for children.
Good answer.
What I would suggest is to find out all of the choice laws in your state, everything that's available. One of the things I did was I started having town hall style meetings weekly at the school, inviting parents out, letting them know what was available and the opportunities and the laws that were in the state.
I'd say meet parents where they're at. So we have parents come to dinners, free dinners that we hold, and it's a way just to break bread and meet over that way, first.
I would tell them that, first of all, parents can be your best friend or your worst nightmare. Seriously, if you treat their children wrong, they are going to come after you, especially parents that are activated and parents who understand their rights. I think that what we're doing, what like all of us are doing, is raising the bar even for some of those traditional public school spaces, because what they're going to see is that if I don't do better, I'm going to lose parents.
I would say create a safe place for parents to express any frustrations that they have. They have the wisdom and knowledge sometimes that we may not have as a leader. And if we would listen and create that safe place, implement and execute, we can make it happen for the students.
Awesome. Let's thank our panel. Great job.
Now moderating our second panel, Jeff Emmerich.
All right, so I'm Jeff Emmerich, co-founder of Rock by Rock. I was a finalist last year, and the Yass Prize and community has been instrumental in our progress. We're a project-based learning platform, and we empower educators in any context to engage in real-world project-based learning, which actually has a really nice connection to competency-based grading. And so I'm really excited to be here with this group today to say a long overdue farewell to traditional grading. I know, right? So the revolution starts here. So I want to start off by asking each of you to do a brief introduction of you, your organization, and then I've got a question for each of you as it relates to competency-based grading, and then we'll open it up from there. So to get started, Corey Steiner here from Northern Cass. Love to tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and then my question is, what is competency-based grading, and why did you all move in that direction?
Yeah, I'm Corey Steiner. I'm the superintendent at the Northern Cass School District. We're located in rural North Dakota. We made a commitment about 5 years ago to tear down the system that almost all of our kids were going to 4-year colleges, almost every kid was graduating, and we just realized we weren't exactly sure what kind of human beings we were creating and putting out. And so we made this decision to tear down one of the biggest load-bearing walls there were, and that's grading. Grading is really personal. It's personal for parents, it's personal for learners, it's personal for educators. And what it became, our personalized competency-based system came about empowering learners to build their own agency. And probably most importantly was about empowering learners to feel like they can advocate for their learning. And then ultimately for us was when they advocate is to start listening and stop saying, I know better, but to start listening and say, maybe we can do this together, and how do we start to co-facilitate really relevant and authentic learning experiences that can truly give learners the opportunity to not just know what they might want to do, because that's asking a lot of a high school kid, but also to have enough experiences to say, like, I don't want to do that. That's not for me. So then they can start to dig in to figure out what they're passionate about. So for us, what competency-based is, it's about learning instead of a grade. It's not earning, it's learning. And that's really been a key for us. And ultimately what it has created, it's created a system where our learners dictate what our system becomes. And every year it has to be flexible enough to change with them, because every year our learners change. So competency-based for us is about skill development, and it's no longer about a grade.
That's awesome. So, Coy Morrison from the Lab School, I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization, but also you're multi-age. And so what is competency-based learning? How does that support a multi-age environment?
Thank you. I'm Coy Morrison from the Lab School of Memphis. We are a private micro school in Memphis, Tennessee, where our students learn to learn, learn to do, and learn to be in a hybrid environment that offers a self-paced curriculum in addition to a forest school. In terms of how competency-based learning has served us, it has really been a key lever in offering a unique and customized, or as I refer to it, a boutique learning experience, one that is unique to each learner. We have the ability and flexibility to have a learner who is 5 and may be in a traditional environment considered kindergarten, working with and interacting and learning with third grade, what would traditionally be third graders, if that's appropriate. That's actually what is happening in some of our studios, and it allows us to follow our learners as quickly or as they need or desire to go, and follow them versus setting the pace for them.
Awesome. So my next question is for Jeff Ream. David, we're going to come back to you in a second. And you're at Launch, and you all do expeditions. So I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about what you do, and then what role expeditions play in a competency-based approach.
Sure. Jeffrey Ream. I'm at Launch Expeditionary Learning Charter School. We have a middle school. We're expanding to an elementary school. We're building a high school on 1,000 acres of land in Brooklyn. And yeah, learning expeditions, I think, are a really great example of what competency-based assessment can look like in action. All of the content areas work together to solve one problem in a learning expedition, right? So science and social studies and English and math are all trying to answer some kind of big, authentic question, right? And when you focus on learning in that way, it doesn't, it allows you to break free from sort of the inauthenticity of how state standards are usually articulated. And you can chunk those state standards into a much more authentic project or problem that kids are trying to solve. And you can track how they progress towards solving that problem in a way that kids can understand, and that families can understand, and that teachers can understand. And so success, I think, becomes really apparent. And a lack of success, by the way, becomes really apparent. And that's a much more motivating thing because it's authentic, right? Like, you're trying to solve a problem. Did I solve it? Did I not? Where did I do well? Where did I not do well, right? What do I need to do better at? That's what learning should look like, as opposed to, I got a 70% in social studies. What does that 70% mean? It's an average of a bunch of different skills, content knowledge, and behaviors that doesn't actually express to that student or that family what a child knows. It's an average of a bunch of stuff that neither the teacher nor the student nor the family could actually say what it is. So I think learning through projects is a great way to start to try to figure out, like, well, what are the competencies that I want kids to be able to do, and how do I bring them into that equation and make it really transparent and ultimately really motivating for kids.
Awesome. So next question is for Juana Brown at RCMA, and you all have a dual language program, and so I'm curious, like, how does competency-based learning support and look different in a dual language setting?
Yeah, that's exactly, I think, our challenge. And one of the things I heard today on the bus, and that's the amazing thing about this, is that I feel like we're constantly hearing things from our group that provoke thoughtful challenges. And it was about the healthy learning environment where we knew that we had students, our students in our school were rural schools. We start with children in as young as 6 weeks, and we do early childhood and also now charter schools. And so we started with a challenge in these rural communities about how we could look at learning in a little bit of a different way, because we knew that we were educating the bilingual brain. And that's very different because and so we started developing our curriculum, our framework for the school in a very innovative dual language way, and yet we thought, but the assessments are not aligned to the way the students are learning. And I think that the tragic thing is that where the assessments, what we were seeing is it's asking students to tell us what you know in this assessment at this particular time, but it's not demonstrate what you know in both languages. And so I think that that is a challenge, because what it is, it's looking at learning, but not in a deep and thoughtful way. We wanted our students to be able to demonstrate the academic learning, knowledge, skills in a deep and profound way, but we also wanted them to demonstrate habits of mind, because learning is much more than academics. In order to be successful, a child needs to be able to have a set of skills and competencies that are able to, again, allow a student, if we're educating for college and career, to really work in a way that demonstrates how that process happens. And habits of mind absolutely is part of the equation. That doesn't come into traditional assessments. And so what we wanted to do is if we believe in equity, and we do, we believe that every child needs to demonstrate what they know. And when you're looking at a one-size-fits-all assessment, it's not compatible with the way we believe, our philosophy and our model of education. And so that, for us, it was the challenge of responding to the needs of our students, and also what I think is an innovative way to look at education. And oftentimes we forget the assessment piece, which is so important.
Yeah, and I appreciate what you said about the one-size-fits-all not being a one-size-fits-all, because it's actually a good segue to my question for David. And so David Lipkin at Lift Learning, we've heard a lot of different contexts that use competency-based learning. Your program can help support all different types of contexts. Could you tell us a little bit more about some of the challenges in assessing competency-based approaches and how you all go about helping address and support those?
Sure, thanks, Jeff. Hi, everybody. So I'm David Lipkin, co-founder and CEO of Lift Learning. We provide a technology platform and support services for schools of all types to operationalize competency-based learning. But really what we want to do is not operationalize competency-based learning. We want empowered learners. We want learner-centered environments. And you can do competency-based without empowering your learners. And you can do project-based learning without empowering your learners. So our platform is built around agency first and foremost because we feel that's where intrinsic motivation, transparency, all of those essential skills really live. That said, my co-founder and I saw that across the country, there were all of these schools with different flavors of competency-based learning, right? They all had a piece of this. And we wanted to do two things. We wanted to make sure that every single school that is committing to competency-based learning, even if they don't know what that looks like in their local culture, will have a pathway. So we engineered a solution that's adaptable to all the different flavors of competency-based assessment that are out there, because we can't afford to lose this movement. This is the future of education. But then we wanted to be provocative. We wanted to say, it's not enough to go there. Where is your equity? Where is your transparency? Where are you giving your learners the chance to own the criteria? Because we know what happened when we stood up our own competency-based, passion-based learning programs, how transformative that is when that happens. So we're nowhere near done. We're just making sure that the landscape is fully supported for the future of education.
Thank you. So I think the work that you all just described is so important. It's also can be really hard to do. Moving from a very long-held tradition of traditional grading to something like competency-based grading is a change management process. And so what lessons have you learned that you might share with anyone who's listening today who's thinking about making the change? Like, what pitfalls would you want to help them avoid, or what were some of your key takeaways about helping make that type of transition?
I can take that one first. One of the things that we have learned through the process of implementing competency-based learning, we actually have a badge system. Our learners earn badges that are based on mastery of skills or understandings, concepts. And we have learned the importance of transparency with families, both learners and parents. So in the spirit of parent power, ensuring that parents truly understand what that means and the significance of it, and how it in fact empowers their learners, and how it allows their learners to own the learning that is happening, and there is more focus and emphasis on the process. Again, we equip learners to learn and to do and to be, and so we are able to integrate not just academics, but also other skills in terms of leadership, or in terms of even with our forest school programming and safety, and we're able to integrate all of that, which letter grades just simply don't serve it. So laying that out for parents and the transparency there has been an important lesson, as well as remaining flexible and open to adjusting. We are a learner-driven environment, so there are times when, based on the feedback that comes from our learners, either explicitly or implicitly or through observation, we know that it's time to make a change, and they own our studios. So we follow them, and so being open and flexible is a huge takeaway from our process.
Yeah, I would say, one, I learned that there's a lot more swear words to describe me after we started taking away traditional grades. That was a tough lesson to learn. But what I learned is this, is like, don't go out and buy a program. People think you can do that. Like, oh, there's this program, we'll just use this. And I'm not talking about what David's talking about. I'm saying like a grading program. You know your people best. You know your culture best. You know your region best. Figure out who has to be at the table, and you get those people at the table and you start having conversations. For us, we got legislators, we got our Department of Public Instruction, our governor, we had parents, we had learners, we had educators. They all were at the table when we made this shift. And also the other thing I will tell you is it never ends. The moment that you think like, oh, we've got competency-based grades, we can exhale, let's go on to the next thing, it will not happen. I tell people, if you say we're gonna pilot competency-based grades, you might as well just stay with traditional grades, because that's what will happen, is you will go back to what is comfortable. You have to engage as many of your stakeholders as possible, and you have to be really ready to push back if you truly believe that's what's right for learners.
I would I would build on that. I think that's a great point. I feel like competency-based grading is one critical component of how to reassess assessment, right? Like, what's the purpose of assessment? And, do we need to provide, in certain situations or not, a grade at all, right? Like, is a question people should be asking. But I think in managing that change towards what I think is a critical process of implementing competency-based grading, it's what are the other components of assessment? What does assessment mean at our school? Being able to have that question. And there are things that you can do in answering that question that I think help to lead people towards an understanding of competency-based assessment, which can be complicated. It can be hard to understand, it can be hard to do, right? And I'll give one example from our school. Lots of EL education schools across the country do this. If you have a student-led conference or a passage portfolio, so a conference that's not a parent-teacher conference, a student-led conference, right, where kids have to compile their work and they have to be able to own and talk about their learning to their teachers and their family, and they have to own that process. That is a tremendously powerful gateway to sort of touching on each of the things that a competency-based education assessment program will help you to do even better, right? And so there are a lot of things that you can name, exhibitions of learning and passive portfolios, learning targets, all these things, but find those things that are entryways that help you reassess what assessment looks like. Sorry.
Yeah, and we've got just under 1 minute left, and I want to give everyone a chance to have one parting thought. So in one sentence, what would you say is like the biggest value add to moving to competency-based grading that you would share with a skeptic?
Well, I would say that sitting through a class doesn't mean that learner learned anything. That's completely up to the educator and their quality. So I hope for future panels will be about the educator training that needs to happen. But when you make it about the skill, the kids can own it, the parents can see it, they know that this is something that will have value throughout the lifetime of this learner, and that's what we need to go for.
Great.
I think we have to ask ourselves why we assess and whether what we want to see is students who have mastered knowledge, skills, and habits of mind and can demonstrate that in a lifelong way, not just take a test.
Great.
So I think that's
Great.
One of the most beautiful things about this system is that it requires the adults in the building to truly see and know the learners in front of them. You must see them if you're going to implement this effectively.
Yeah, that's beautiful. A system, yeah, that's just fantastic. A system based on learning creates beautiful human beings.
Awesome. All right, thank you so much, everyone. Really appreciate it.
Now moderating our third panel, Patricia Brantley.
I'm going to stand right here next to you. Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon. This, my friends, is the moment you've been waiting for, because the panelists here today are going to tell you what the future of education looks like as we scale and sustain sustainable school models. I am Pat Brantley. I'm the CEO of Friendship Schools in Washington, D.C., where we bring brick and mortar and virtual schoolhouses to 5,000 students from age 3 years old to 12th grade. Listen, our time is going to go fast, so I'm going to get right to it. I am going to start with the man to my left, your right, Amar Kumar of KaiPod Learning. Amar, KaiPod Learning, a network of in-person education centers for online learners and homeschoolers. Now, we know you've worked for 15 years to improve education around the globe, and you arguably know something about scaling since you built the technology and curriculum for 400,000 learners through one of the world's biggest online learning platforms. I'm really moved by your passion, by your desire of building Kaipat Learning for your daughter to have a modern education where she is supported and challenged, where she meets her best friend, and where she builds the skills she will need to succeed in life. Now, isn't that beautiful? But Amar, my friend, let's be real. Online school during the pandemic failed scores of children. You can't possibly want to bring that to even more.
I am so glad you asked that question. Those are fighting words. No. Yes. So online learning during the pandemic was like sugar-free ice cream. It's sugar-free, but it's not ice cream, right? So it was online, but it's not really learning. And what it was the best that a lot of exhausted and frustrated and stressed educators could pull together at the last minute. That was what we saw during the pandemic. Now let's talk about the future of online learning. And the best way to think about it is to think about the way we used to watch TV 10 years ago. Let's say you wanted to watch Friends. How would you watch it? You'd figure out when it was playing. You'd go sit on your couch in front of your TV and wait for it to start. And then when it would start, you'd have to watch it without stopping. You couldn't go to the bathroom or you'd miss something. If you missed a line of dialogue, too bad. If you were bored during a scene, too bad. How do you watch Friends today? You stream it. You decide when to watch it, where to watch it, how fast to watch it, whether to go back, whether to skip something. That's what learning ought to be. You shouldn't have to someone else decide the pace of your learning. So online school of the future, which we built when I was at Connections and what we see millions of kids do today, is actually modern. It's not what we saw in the pandemic. And so it's so good that 20% of kids during the pandemic told us it was the best year of school they have ever had. Think about that. And so now if you can put those wraparound supports for them to make friendships, for their parents to get them out of the house, for there to be academic support, then you've really got the best of all worlds.
Thank you. I've often said that what we did during the pandemic in many cases was emergency rapid response, online, remote, or error. You know, we didn't do it in all ways, in the best ways for children. And I'm very glad to see that there are models that are going to take the best of online learning and merge it for our children. So Erin, my next question is for you. So Erin Whalen is a walking, talking success story of K-12 education, rising from student to teacher to leader to founder of Da Vinci Rise High School. What I find fascinating about Erin is that he is not just focused on giving kids what he got, which was successful as a kid. He's worked to create something new, a new model to engage high school kids that, according to your website, prioritizes meeting students where they are and getting them where they need to be, and emphasizes anytime, anywhere learning. Listen, beautiful words, but what does that really mean at Da Vinci Rise High School?
Absolutely. Thanks for asking that question. I would say it really has to do with the design process and the essential question of the innovator, and how truly integral it is to them to maintain that essential question throughout their design process. One thing adults are really good at is having a great idea and thinking that it lasts forever, and that no matter, as just shared, right, no matter how the world changes around them, the situations of the students in the building, we hold on to that good idea because it worked one time 10 years ago. And so I would say the heart of meeting kids where they are is figuring that out first. And so when we built RISE, we had a roundtable of youth in the foster care system, homeless, and probation, because we believe our essential question is building from the margins will allow us to create schools that are good for any kid. Well-resourced schools that are amazing for any student in any place, because we're building from the kids who have not had the level of stability that the students who are performing well maybe have had. And so anywhere, anytime means that we learn from them, and they share they need transportation. They needed agility in the way that they were graded, in the way that their seat time could not equal the grade that they're getting at the end. It had to be with the integrity of mastery-based grading and project-based learning. So all of the best practices that you're hearing in these panels, the students were saying themselves, and there's the students on the margins who needed it the most. And so I think that anywhere, anytime is consistently every single day asking yourself that question. And it does not mean that it's gonna be a consistent model that's the same everywhere. So we have 3 sites around the county, and each one has its own life and own culture and rhythm, because each part of the city is different, each student is different, and then each one has specialties for the individual kids in the building. And so it meets them where they are, anywhere, anytime.
Thank you. I often believe that if you design for the margin, you will meet the kids at the center, because let's face it, we are all at the margin at some point in our educational career. So Dr. Jack Prius, Open Sky. I have to tell you how impressed I am with Open Sky's vision of growing a network of faith-based learning environments that are accessible and affordable for all, and how impressed I am with you and your work as an education leader with a passion for engaging teachers, leaders, and ministries to advance Christian education. I read an article recently, you probably have all seen these articles, but they state that this is a once-in-a-100-year moment for Christian education, that following mass public school closures in the spring of 2020, Christian schools grew 13 to 20%. Another article stated the fear, grief, and tumult of COVID-19 brought an unfortunate blessing for Christian education. And of course, I have to mention test scores. Whether you love them or hate them, the reality is that in our Christian schools, we saw improvements in test outcomes. Christian schools were the bright spot on our nation's report card. So tell us, Dr. Prius, amid all the bad news for student progress, but the good news for families choosing Christian schools, what exactly is the value proposition? What is the uniqueness of Open Sky?
Yeah, thank you, and it's so humbling to be here, be on this panel. Greetings from our entire team at Open Sky, many of whom are watching. Hello, everybody. So we really believe in a full and lasting education, one where families have a choice to embrace faith-based educational options in their community, character, and of course, high-quality academics. And so for the last 20 years, we've been working to provide those options to families in the communities that we serve through publicly funded, privately run Christian schools in Milwaukee, or charter schools with a faith-based wraparound program in Arizona. And as you said, over the last couple of years, we've seen an enormous surge in interest in values-aligned, I call it values-aligned, faith-based education, right, where families are waking up. We heard through the accelerator about the dawn of parent demand. And one aspect of parent demand is an interest in partnering with schools who share their values. And for many Christian values, that is a faith-based, Bible-based Christian education. And so our value that we hope to bring is to reduce the risks and friction for the countless churches, local founders, community leaders who want to get advanced Christian education in their communities but don't know how to do it. And so we want to take the experience that we've gained over the last 20 years and turn that into a scalable national Christian microschool model that does reduce those risks and friction in helping them launch and then, of course, sustain those schools so that we can continue to provide not only a Christian education, but a high-quality academic experience for kids in communities all over the country.
Thank you. All right. Ms. Janelle Wood, as always, it is a pleasure to be in your presence. Your bio says it all. Founder and CEO of the Black Mothers Forum, of course, but also a wife, a mother, and an activist with a passion to see that our Black sons and Black daughters are free to live in safe and supportive environments. Well, obviously, the first structured environment outside of the home for most of our families that kids go to is school. And the results of hundreds of years tell us that school, especially for Black children, must change. So what is it that the Black Mothers Forum seeks to do to bring about a change in schooling for Black children? What's the new model you envision?
Well, thank you all for having us here today. It's a blessing. Thank you, Patricia, and each one of the esteemed panelists. Black Mothers Forum, our whole focus has been to make sure that our Black sons and daughters are human, they're dignified, and they're respected for who they are. We decided that it was time for us to stop fussing with the traditional model because we kept asking the traditional model to create safe and supportive learning environments for our children because our main focus was to end the school-to-prison pipeline because we recognize that 6 to 8 times more likely our children are being pushed out. That means suspended and expelled. So we decided that we would create an environment where our children don't have to live in a space of fright, of flight, or fight mode, but they could actually feel safe, they could feel supported, they could be nurtured for who they are as human beings, and that as human beings, we all make mistakes, and those mistakes should not be punitive where they get the consequence of a suspension or expulsion. So we decided we were going to give them an opportunity to be their true, authentic selves from K through 8th grade. We most recently added pre-K, again, listening to the needs of our parents and our children. And we put them in an environment where now they are free to be themselves. They are free to finally make a mistake, get some connection with an adult who cares for them, and redirect them back to a place where they can now learn. We have found that our children now are learning at a rate that they have never learned before. They are able to absorb that information because now they're at peace. Anyone who has come into our space has always said to us, and we've had many visitors, they say, I have never felt anything like it. It's a feeling. It's a culture of serenity, of peace, so our children can learn. They absorb that learning that way. Our other thing that we have done in this model is that we have now worked on promoting healthy mindsets of parents. Many of our Black parents felt excluded in the current traditional model. They feel like their voice is not welcome there. They feel like they don't belong there. And they feel like someone is always judging them for where they're at. And so we have welcomed in Black mamas, Black educators, Black daddies. And we said, look, you have a seat at the table. You tell us what you need. And we provide those wraparound services for the family. We listen, we care, we love. And our children now can live out their free, God-given purpose, free from the threat of suspension or expulsion, and they can now grow and become the lifelong learners that we so desperately want to see our children become.
Thank you so much. No one ever founded a school and wanted children to feel fight, fright, or flight. Unfortunately, that is happening too much across the country, and I thank you for providing a seat at the table for families to deliver something new. And now, Joanne Mitchell, founder of Mission, Achievement, and Success Charter School. I know a little of your story of overcoming significant obstacles in your own life to become a first-generation high school graduate and a first-generation college graduate, and now a catalyst for change through your life's work of bringing transformative educational experiences to others. So we know that the school you founded has been successful. That's why you're here. An A-rated school that is hailed as one of the top in your state. We all know this. One great school in a state is awesome. But the truth is, we need many, many more, and this panel is focused on scaling. Tell me, Joanne, from your point of view, are the politics and community will there to help you scale your great school? Or what have you confronted that might be a lesson for others?
First, thank you for having me, and it's an honor to be here, represent our school and New Mexico. And there have been great challenges. We've grown 20 times in 10 years, and so the community, from parent standpoint and community members who wanted more for their kids, was absolutely there. When we had 1,000 students on our wait list, that's what prompted that we need to replicate. But the political challenges were lofty. and this is where I was pretty naive to the process, right? Like I always looked at myself as I'm an educator and I educate kids. I mean, that's what I'm great at. I didn't know I had to navigate that process. So yeah, it's been really challenging. I think that we've rounded some corners, but we were the first school in our state to replicate. There was no legislation at the time for replication, and we did that anyhow, and that came with a lot of challenges after the fact. Like we navigated that process and thought, victory, only to find that, they came in and swept some funding from us, and there was just a lot that we encountered. A few years ago when we looked to expand our school, we ran into a lot of politics around the expansion and around, this concept of what happened was there was some, lack of support, we'll say, from some of the neighborhood, folks, and it turned into, they packaged it as a safety issue, but it really was just an inconvenience of traffic. And so what was really disturbing about it was there was some political support for that argument. And when we met with the city councilman about it, we were told very directly that it's not our families that vote. And that's the truth. And it broke my heart. Like, we really did, because I guess I was just I don't know, it just shattered like what I really believed. I believed deeply that people did care about education. And so when that was said, I don't know, it was just heart-wrenching to me because I was like, okay, what I thought was true is not true, right? So we ran into issues like that. I mean, there's been a myriad of other things that we've been navigating, but I think we really finally rounded the corner. There's a term in psychology about an adolescent fable, and that's where any of you who work with adolescents, you know that they have this narrative that like, it only happens to me. Everybody's looking at me. This is all about me, right? Well, I had the MAS narrative that I thought it was all about us and this only happens to us. And then as I spoke to folks around the nation, I recognized that this is a problem that other people encounter too. And we just had to stay true to the mission and to the work that we were doing and recognizing that this was going to be part of the journey and we just had to navigate it. And that's what we continue to do.
Thank you. I've learned we can't do the work just from the schoolhouse doors inward. We have to go outward and affect the politics. So, our final panelist, Luann of Brea Public Schools. I have been looking forward to hearing your thoughts on scaling and sustaining emerging models. In some ways, Brea is the poster child for staying classical as you emerge new. Brea emerged from the heartbreaking decision of the Archdiocese of New York to shutter over 60 Catholic schools in 2011. The founders of Brea knew they had to find a way to continue serving the families who had lost access to the education they cherished. And so, the final question for you is, what is your advice for those who are looking to scale and sustain new models?
So first of all, thank you, and thank you to the Yazzes. So my advice, following on what Joanne just said, the environment has been very challenging, and it's not just one school, it's the environment. In terms of my advice for what you can control as a leader trying to scale a model or schools in our case, is focus early on talent. That has been probably our most challenging challenge, if you will. When you're starting from one school, you have a vibrant entrepreneurial founder with a great heart. And what's challenging in education is folks who go into education, teachers generally to start out with, it's a very different skill set from leading, managing people, and then from thinking more abstractly scaling. And how do you develop a large organization that has so many components to it: facilities, real estate, finance, talent, curriculum, instruction, governance, as it deals with, if it's a charter school, board management. And so bringing in top quality talent early on from the outside in our experience, was the most important advice. And we didn't always do it well. We made so many mistakes. But bringing in fresh blood, because what happens is if you rely on your core founding team to keep replicating, you end up diluting your existing operations, and you would weaken them. We're always taking our best folks, promoting them up to principal or AP principal, or bringing them to open up a new school, and then you leave your original school in a weakened state. So focus early on talent, bring in strong quality talent, but do so in a way in which they fully embrace your mission and vision. You have to be able to figure out how to bring in mission-oriented people that are fully aligned with what you're trying to do, rather than end up diluting it. And that's also challenging.
We are at time. But thank you, thank you, thank you to everyone on the panel, to you in the audience. The pandemic disrupted learning for millions of school children, but that doesn't mean that there weren't bright spots. The people on this panel and in this audience, you are the bright spots. And we thank the Yazzes for their dedication, for the Yass Prize for Education and the STOP Award, because this is what the future will look like, and it will be bright. Thank you.
Now moderating our fourth panel, Christopher Simmons.
check. Can you all hear me? Can you all hear me? Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Christopher Simmons, and I'm coming to you from the sunny side of the 305 Miami, Florida. I do miss that weather. I serve as the principal of CARE Elementary School, which stands for the Christian Academy for Reaching Excellence. And a year ago, I was right where you are, in that hot seat, nervous about the question I was going to get by Mr. Thunder Voice himself, Randall Lane. But I don't want you to be nervous. I want you to be relaxed. Now I'm in the driver's seat asking the questions. All right, so first up, I want to talk to you guys. This is apprenticeships and skill-based models throughout education. Now, for many years, career and technical education programs have been revolutionizing how we see and view education. Schools have been infusing apprenticeships and skill-based models within their curriculum. Research has found that there has been a positive relationship between career skill-based education programs and increased high school graduation rates, particularly for at-risk students. That is amazing. With the guidance and leadership from these fine men right here, we now have students who have a pathway to careers in agriculture, creating prosthetics for veterans, construction, HVAC, and other high-demand trades. Give it up for these guys right here. So I'm going to start with my friend right here from Uncommon Construction, Mr. Aaron Fruman. You all give students a cool real-world experience while actually working in it. Students actually learn how to build a house in a semester. Can't believe this. What transferable skills are students learning that will serve them in an innovative and technological society, my friend?
Awesome. Thanks, man. Cool. Yeah, everybody heard it. It's a really cool thing. It's really cool. So is this whole experience. So I just want to start the panel by saying thank you to everybody. This has been really, really awesome. So our young people develop technical skills and they learn and gain technical skills on a construction site over the course of a semester. That was a pre-pandemic pace of construction. We've since, slowed our roll a little bit. We built a house in a school year with a bunch of differentiated programs and more rigorous projects and things like that. But our kids are getting, technical skill training on the job, but we put a heavy emphasis on the development and demonstration of soft skills. We know that with 100 hours of experience on a job site, you're gonna learn how to read a tape measure, you're gonna learn how to bend nails, and then eventually get good at that. But it's really doubling down, hanging our hard hat, so to speak, on soft skills and the way that these skills present themselves in our work and life. And so we really, try and celebrate those, bring those forward so that those are just as visible as the physical transformation that we create in our Uncommon classroom.
Great job, guys. Give it up for him. Good job. My next question, my friend, check us out. We got David Wooford here. Now, most career and technical programs begin in high school, but you, my friend, have decided to take that exploration reading readiness process as early as pre-K. Now, talk to us, please. What is happening in your district or community that you saw a need to introduce students to career choices as early as preschool?
I'm David Wofford, Superintendent of Chickasaw City Schools, and this began about 10 years ago. Our district was part of a 58,000 student district. 4 square miles, we had students that went to over 60 different schools. And our people, our parents, they decided they wanted better for their students. So we started a school system in Chickasaw that would serve that 4 square mile community. And in doing so, over the years, we've developed a vision that we want to prepare every student for the day after graduation. Well, what does that look like? Well, it begins in pre-K. We do crayons to career in pre-K, and if you ask students what they want to be when they grow up, they'll tell you what they see. They're limited to what they see, so we expose them to opportunities that are out there. And we feel like, in part, the 4-year system has overpromised and underdelivered for our students. So what we want to do is make sure that they have some sort of high skill certificate before they walk out the door of our school system. That way they can go to work and the people that they work for can pay for additional education and they don't walk out of college with a house note that we call a student loan. So we're looking to make sure that those students prepare early and start to see what's available. Everyone in the country is looking for outstanding certificated workers. We want to be a part of that solution. We've started our own apprenticeship. We're the first school in the state of Alabama to have our own school apprenticeship. It's in the IT portion. And we'll be doing a seminar for the rest of the state next month so that they can see what we're doing with that. And we're kind of what they call a fat chef. We don't just make an apprenticeship. We hire those kids directly to save us money in pulling fiber in IT, and they'll walk out with a CompTIA certificate. That's just one of the things. We're also, the prosthetic program that we do, it gives our students an opportunity to dream, to think, and to act. And what we do is we print these 3D prosthetics and we take them to developing nations where 80% of the amputees are, and we actually fit them in the developing nations with these prosthetics. We're also doing a container ship project where we will take a container that's come off one of the shipping containers and we turn it into this one's going to be a solar-powered computer classroom that we will deliver probably to El Salvador this summer to give those students opportunities where they are to get a better education. So the average age of apprenticeship, if you take the average apprentice in the United States, does anyone know what their age is? 28. What's happened in those 10 years? So we want to address this early, and we're taking it to another level with our parents. We're providing busing opportunities for our parents during the day so that they can go to the local community college while we have their students, and they can earn a high-value certificate and start making sustainable wages.
Great job, Mr. Wolford. From crayons to careers. That's right. Love that. Next up, Father Judge High School with Mr. Brian Patrick King. Father Judge is a traditional Roman Catholic high school that has been in existence for almost 70 years, and I understand you are one of the alumni from class of 97. I didn't give your age away, did I? All right. How were you able to convince the Archdiocese of the need to offer career and technical training from a traditional setting that typically does that to Ivy League schools? Now, also, it's a two-part question I want to ask you. What type of apprenticeship or leadership programs do you now have or are planning to make available so that these students can better their community in Philadelphia?
Thank you. Thank you for being here. And this is a tough act to follow here with this guy. For us, being a student, growing up in the neighborhood, serving the neighborhood, I've always been there in Northeast Philadelphia, and being a former educator, was in community development before I came back to Father Judge. Understanding what the community needs and being data-driven. I had a survey conducted, a SWOT analysis conducted, a strategic plan formulated, and so we are methodically following that. So relative to convincing the Archbishop and those in the superintendent's office at the diocese, it was a methodical reason, and the other piece was we had independently raised the money to pay for it. So that always helps in a conversation when you have to convince somebody that you can lead the program where it needs to go. This year, that first group just graduated, so that was like my fourth son. I have 3 boys. This program was my last, and welders graduated this year from our first cohort. And when you see students, the median income of the families we serve at $42,500, you talk about students graduating with Defense Department job and security clearances, making $65,000, $66,000, $67,000. I mean, it's impactful, and it's community changing along with educationally changing the school's environment.
Great work. Great work. Next up, Hope Ranch Learning Academy, Mr. Jose Suarez. Do you track or monitor the students after graduation to determine the success of the programs that they were involved in while at Hope Academy? And if so, do you see areas where you can improve the success of the programs in developing the necessary leadership skills and other abilities?
Well, great question. So thank you. Thank you for having us here. What an experience this has been. It's just, we were talking in the bus and over here that how much this whole process has expanded our thinking and changed our thinking, reinventing, reimagining education. And so to your first question, yes, we track them. And unfortunately, we're running at around about 50%, right? Some of it because of intellectual ability, some of it because of not the right fit. But so we're learning through that process. But the one thing that drives us, though, is that when we did the research and what really put it to the test is our parents keep asking the same question over and over again. What's going to happen to my child when I'm no longer around? And that's that's concerning for any parent. But for a parent with a child with autism, which is the population we serve, the statistics shows that 85% of adults with autism and a college education are unemployed. 85%. Well, that kind of brings it to a critical point, so we needed an answer for that. So we developed a program called Hope for Tomorrow. We're tracking that. But, besides the technical skills and the apprenticeship that we're all doing terrific in, one of the things that we've realized is that getting these, whether it's autism or any other, or even neurotypical, is the soft skills. And you mentioned it initially, the soft skills that we are not focusing as strong in. When you have to disagree with your boss, how do you do it correctly, right? When your boss says, hey, I need you to do that, and you're like, the answer is you do it. You do it. And then later on, you can come back. So teaching those soft skills from kindergarten, we actually start in kindergarten, and then we build on it as we get to the high school years. That keeps them employed because now they learn how to communicate better. Another soft skill, which gets all of us in trouble, is financial management. So in our school system, we start every classroom has a token economy system, right? So you do this, you get that kind of trade. Well, why not incorporate financial management from the kindergarten level and build it up all the way up to the high school level so that when they graduate, now they have a knowledge about how to manage their finances and their finances doesn't manage them, regardless of what job. Because I remember having a real high-paying job, not knowing the skill, and ended up in a lot of debt. So, it's as well as being poor. So it's rethinking that whole process of apprenticeship and skills-based and looking at soft skills, as well as the apprenticeship, including money management, so we can graduate a very successful person.
Great answer. All right, next up, Build Up, Mr. Mark Martin. Now, your Build Up program is revolutionizing neighborhoods while using an education-based approach to combat poverty in the communities you serve. Kudos to you, my friend. Give us more insight with regards to your results in students closing achievement gaps through earning financial capital and stipends while establishing home ownership through the process. Have you seen more academic buy-in from students using these skill-based approaches?
Absolutely, but it's still not a silver bullet, right? There are none of those in education, as we've already heard. So what else brings the kids to the table? And for us, that's the agency of knowing that they can totally transform their communities. And it starts out by clearing blighted land that's kind of been left for dead. The cool thing about construction, Aaron talked about this and knows it well, and even landscaping is, it goes from overgrown grass and bushes where rodents and pests are kind of terrorizing the neighborhood to cleaning and greening. And that then is a catalyst we get donated houses that we literally lift over the mountain off foundations and bring them into the city of Birmingham where construction is not possible. As you mentioned, we pay our students. They're working really hard, and young people in this world should be able to realize the benefits of that and see it directly into their pocket. It's hard to teach financial literacy to somebody who doesn't have any money in their wallet. So we put that in their wallets, and then we teach them how to manage that. And of course, they're going to make those mistakes, but school age is the time to make those mistakes, not once you have children, not once you have all these responsibilities. So that's really what we push them on. And then the home ownership piece is key. But first, it's such a big responsibility. So we set them up to live in the homes while mom, dad, grandparents are renting, and we call that practice home ownership, changing out air filters, managing the lawns so that they're getting those skills underway in a more supportive system. And then once they complete our whole program, that's a high school diploma, graduate degree, and then what we call postgrad degree or credential, I should say, and then what we call a path to the middle class. That's when they'll take 0% interest mortgages to build real wealth in this world, and that can then tackle the racial wealth gap that we struggle with in our communities especially.
Great job, Mr. Martin. Well said, well said. Mr. Wendell Scales from Arkansas Lighthouse. The AgriSTEM Pathways program is not only preparing students to have a career in agriculture, it is also changing the mindset of what a career in agriculture means in today's world. How are you empowering students to become agents of social change and positively impact their community with the skills they are learning in this program?
Well, first, as agriculture state, sometimes you have to slow down and say, well, what are we already doing collectively? how are we all trying to solve these problems? Agriculture is one of the main industries. There are a lot of problems tied to that. COVID allowed us to create a summer initiative program to eliminate summer slide, but also focus on joy. And we know through our Beyond the Walls learning experiences, we could create opportunities outside of the classroom, aligning ourselves with industry partners, because let's be fair, they're still trying to figure it out as well. And if we can sit at the table with them, we can solve these problems together. So aligning ourselves with our partners to collectively move forward ultimately gives us the opportunity to solve a problem together in unison.
Great job. Gentlemen, fabulous job. And we got 2 minutes to spare. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for the panelists.
Now moderating our fifth panel, Taylor Shedd.
All right, our timer has started. So first and foremost, I want you to know how big of an honor it is just to host this panel and to be in the presence of these 32 semifinalists. I texted the Yass Prize team after I left Miami last week. I think it was a couple weeks ago, last week, I don't know at this point, but I said, every time I'm in the company of Yass Prize recipients, I really feel as if I'm in the presence of what human potential can be at its greatest. So I feel that way about everybody in this room that's working to support children in diverse spaces, and I certainly feel that way about our panelists up here today. So my name is Taylor Shedd. As you probably know, I built school in a video game, and we're here to talk about how learning is blended in the classroom. So the digital, the blended, and the in-person learning and what's happening today. So when we start, I would love for each panelist, first we're gonna start with the school, so Scott, you'll go up first. Tell us more about your school program and what does learning look like in your classrooms with your unique school program?
Yeah, well, thanks, Taylor. Again, kudos back to you, too. It's an honor to be here with you. So Purdue Polytechnic High School exists in Indiana to really help close the preparation gap, particularly for low-income students, students of color, to get into places like Purdue University or other Tier 1 universities around the country where we know that number is abysmally low. And so to do that, we had to drastically change what the high school experience looked like in order to get a different outcome. And so what that means is using all of the things you see there, integrating everything into projects. You've heard panel after panel after panel talk about students working on real world applications. And we actually changed that a little bit to say they're working on their world applications, right? So it's students being able to choose what they do and then to utilize all of these things to deliver the content, but not in an isolated island of content, but integrated into how do you solve the problem. And if you do that, you create an opportunity for students to change an outcome that was essentially the system had preordained for them and to break out of that as much as they can.
Thank you so much. Amon, the question is for you as well. What does the classroom look like? What does nature-based schooling look like?
Thank you so much, Taylor. Can you guys hear me okay? Good. All right. So we do a little bit of everything in our program. It really is truly a human-centered school. We really base off of, we're personalized. We noticed that our learners did much better outside in nature, so we just started taking class outside. If that meant taking their laptops outside, then that's what we did, and that's where we learn. And that's what it looks like. If they want to climb a tree and do their homework up there, like, that's what it looks like. But it's really all about them. Sometimes we're inside, sometimes we're outside, but it's really all about whatever they want to do.
Thank you. Steve, I'm going to throw it to you at the end. Tell us about your school model and what does learning in the classroom look like?
Thank you so much, and thank you all for all the work that you do. I'm so impressed by each and every one of you. What Capital Prep represents is what happens when you take a child from where they are to where they could never have dreamed to be. We take children in all grades, not just in kindergarten or not just in the entry grades. We take them all the way to the 12th grade. In fact, last year, over a third of our senior class had only been with us for less than 18 months, yet we sent 100% of them on to four-year colleges. The way you do that is to blend the analog and the online. What you have to do is to recognize that we don't suffer from an economic gap as it would often be played, but from a belief gap. So we have to find ways to mitigate the implications of having low access to quality instruction. Whether the person sees the children for who they can be is not always something we could determine when we hire them. So what we have to do is we have to mitigate the impact of personal bias that is implicit in much of what we do, and create academic experiences that extend beyond the circumstances into which the children are born, into where it is they hope to be.
Excellent. I'm going to throw one more question back to you before we get to our non-school panelists. What are the limitations that exist in the classroom that cause you to say, we need to go digital and we need to blend this experience? So it's not always on a teacher. Talk to us about that. Is it the teachers, is it the environment? What are some of the limitations that cause you to go digital?
Many of them are very pedestrian. We find ourselves in a time where there's a 350,000 person gap in terms of job openings for teaching. So that's just that. And then in urban communities, we've always suffered from having less access to the most effective instructors. And so we can't hope that people are going to find their way to the hood to teach Black and Latin kids. We have to bring the best resources to bear to transform the circumstances today, because we can't punt on this generation. They're here for us. We have to create models that have the heft to serve not just a few but many, to transform not just the way in which our school operates, but the way in which the education experience operates. So the limits have been significant, and they were designed to be so.
Thank you for that. Danae, I want to go to you next with Coded by Kids. So talk to us about your program, but what I'm really interested for the audience to know is, what needle are you looking to move with your programming? So talk to us about that.
Sure, happy to do that. So the needle that we're really trying to move is the needle of expectation. We always talk about raising that bar. So much of what you hear about in tech equity is about getting people into jobs, into the workforce as quick as possible. We know that we need to participate, but underrepresented people also need to be leaders in the tech and innovation space. So what we're trying to position people, what our differentiation point is we are preparing students for the positions that have the most inequity, right? The software developers, the CEOs, the CTOs, because we then know that they have exponential impact at that level. So that needle that we're really trying to push and say, you can actually build your own startup. You might not. Every kid that we have is not going to be a CEO or a CTO. But if they're a director of product, have we failed? Not at all, right? They still have the ability to grow and scale things in a way that they wouldn't if they were only at a lower level.
Thanks so much for that. So as we all know, our classrooms today are competing with the likes of Fortnite and TikTok. I would love for you, Jackson, to speak about how you're taking that competition from the outside world and bringing it into the classroom.
Yeah, so I've been thinking a lot recently about personalized learning and your first language, right? So for a lot of us, if we were gonna have a personalized learning experience, we would want it to be in our first language. And I think for a lot of kids nowadays, that first language is digital media. Awesome common sense media poll. Before the pandemic, 2019, kids were spending 7 hours and 22 minutes per day on screen time. After the pandemic, that was 8 hours and 39 minutes on screen time, and that's not related to homework, right? And so in a world where you have all these kids, and in fact, a lot of the numbers here actually increase when you go to lower income individuals and when you go to underrepresented minorities. So 77% of kids are watching digital videos every single day. In order to speak that native language, you have to be able to spark a moment of inspiration with this digital media, and then you can start moving into other forms of engaging with that kid.
Thank you. So if you've been paying attention to the Twitter world, OpenAI and chat have changed the way that we write today. I'm able to write at the level of Genie with the help of AI. But anyway, I would love to hear from our panelists. What is your vision for what personalized and blended learning in the classroom looks like 7 to 10 years from now? a follow-up question is coming on how are you individually going to bring your school or your program and get there, but please talk to us about what does it look like 7 to 10 years from now?
It's funny that you mentioned ChatGPT because I actually posted on our Yass Prize movement platform, I asked ChatGPT, what does the future of education look like? And it gave this 4-paragraph answer that was eloquent, well put together. It's incredible. And so I think the future 7 to 10 years out will include the ability for you to get your own personal AI that can sit down with you and tutor you. And I think that's the beginning. And then you need to figure out, once you have a kid hooked, once you have that moment of inspiration, once you put them inside of a cell in VR, how are you then, as a teacher who's in the real world with them and knows their story, going to take that moment of inspiration and do something with it?
I think it's also important to note that in this space that we're in with great thinkers and doers, it's important to understand that there are forces that are standing in the way of the work that we do. The Teachers Union is very committed to maintaining the status quo. And in spaces such as these, we very often talk past the gorilla in the room. But many of the policies that are necessary to make many of the practices that we're talking about a reality are opposed by an organization that sees no need to change anything in the way in which we work. So we cannot have some of the conversation about how we're going to transform education without having the rest of the conversation about who's going to have the will to stand in the face of that gorilla and stare him down and say, enough is enough.
Absolutely.
So about AI, I've been talking about this so much because it's such a huge part of understanding what the future, what are we doing now if we can't talk about the fact that our students, are they really going to have to be able to write essays in the next, they're not doing that anymore. They're really not, and we really have to start determining what does that mean? What are they going to be doing now? And I think it frees up a lot of time for really getting into what do they want to do, which we have not been asking them. And if we can really start focusing on what they're passionate about, I think everybody in this room is passionate about education. And once you got to the point that you realized you were passionate about something, you learned every single thing around it that you could to get better at it. That is where we need to start thinking. And I think AI will open that door for children to be able to do that more.
Thank you.
Not to be a Debbie Downer here, but I think the future will look very different depending on what side of the coin that you're on, right? We always talk about, oh, our kids are they're so skilled at tech. They are skilled at being consumers of technology. They are not skilled at being creators of technology. So depending on what they do and what they know, we talk about this in our office, kids don't play instruments anymore, right? When you were a kid, you played an instrument, but you had to learn scales. You had to practice, you had to do this. Now everybody makes beats though. Everybody can make music, but nobody knows how to play an instrument. And it's kind of the same thing with technology, right? Like you have to be able to take that time and really understand the frameworks and what's necessary in that discipline, because we're gonna have people that are on one side that know how to create the trends, how to really make people consume. And we need to make sure that everyone is on the other side of that, so we really have a more diverse landscape and a diverse group of people that are really setting trends and moving things forward.
I love that.
Well, first I'll echo, you got a whole bunch of smart people here, so certainly echo what they do. I think, to your question about AI and the advances in technology, I think what it does is creates the possibility of an ecosystem approach to school versus school being a thing, right? Where you have buildings and teachers and that. You almost dissolve the walls of the school, and now the community is part of the education, right? It's the Boys and Girls Clubs, it's the churches, it's the neighborhoods, it's the mommies. It's everybody involved, in AI and those things make that possible. The role of the teacher becomes much more the role of a coach, right? Helping guide and nurture, and the relationship piece, which everybody needs, but it's possible. Now, to Steve's point, which is exactly right, the system hates that idea. And we'll fight that and fight that and fight that. And our role, we think, with all the people in this room, is to show that it's possible, push the boundaries, and say, you can do this, and you can get a different outcome, and that's what you have to focus on.
All right, we've got about 4.5 minutes left, and I want each of you to have the opportunity to tell the world what you're going to do next. What I would love you to make a connection about is we've all learned so much from one another here at the Yass Prize. Each of us are winners, and you actually have more capital in your pocket to go do something, but what can we expect from you next after this Yass Prize experience? And we'll start here and work our way this way.
Well, I guess I'm taking the bus back because the taxi didn't work out. And then for us, it's about the duality of being an innovator, pushing the envelope as the envelope pushes back, creating the opportunities while the very people who you're trying to create them for don't always understand. So educating the consumer, working with a community who feels like education is given up on them, but showing them that education is still a very real possibility, understanding that the future is to come, but now is where we are, and so bridging that gap. So living in the duality of innovation is where we're going to spend our time.
Thank you.
We're going to diversify the face of technology and innovation. Coded by Kids is going to build that next generation of leaders. They're going to build their own companies and then reinvest in their own communities. So we're going to use technology as a conduit to build generational wealth.
Yeah, we're going to empower teachers and students to create amazing content. So Italy is an app that it's kind of like TikTok meets Khan Academy, and we believe that these individuals need to be represented on learning platforms. So we want to empower them to make amazing stuff that's going to inspire their peers.
So I've been saying this for a while, and I never really thought it'd be a real thing, and now it's coming to reality. But we're looking at 100 schools in 10 years. So 100 kind schools in 10 years is the goal, and we already have a lot of teachers that want to be a part of it, and it's really, truly a movement, and that's the goal and the dream.
Well, for us, we have 3 schools now. We're going to expand throughout Indiana, open more schools to serve more students. But if that was all we were doing, I wouldn't be here, right? It's the whole idea of taking what we do and getting into where the 90% of the students are in this country, into traditional districts around the country that might be open to doing something different but don't know how, and taking the lessons we've learned and saying, look, we can help you with it, whether it's tech, our techniques, the training, how to do projects, and taking that out where we can get scale that is not in the thousands of students, but the tens and tens and tens of thousands, where we can actually make a difference and have that proof point happen within the system that then can get into that ecosystem that we talked about.
I love that. What I find so important about working within the system is some of the goals you talked about, Danae, is that you can't ignore the system because a lot of our most underserved students are there. So the combination of the people in this room who's serving everybody and everything in between is phenomenal. Before I make my closing statement, is there anybody that wants to leave this audience with a lasting thought? It's okay if you don't have one. I just wanted you to have the opportunity. So my closing statement is very much similar to my first statement, which is let this process encourage all of us to drop our differences and to put our best foot forward for the next generation. And if you ever want to remind yourself of what you're capable of, just look at your peers, because each of you have probably shined and out-accomplished what you might have ever thought you could. But because you're doing those things, our kids and our next generation know that they can do them as well. So thank you.
Now moderating our 5th and final panel, Jeannie Allen.
Last but not least, in fact, the best, I'm just going to say it. We are going to talk about why stop for education. So a lot of people think it's really strange. We use this word stop, and why would we use the word stop when it comes to education, right? So we're going to explain a little bit, re-educate ourselves, explain out there, and we're just going to have a conversation. And I'm going to ask you each, I'm going to introduce you, I'm going to ask you each to tell us why you stopped for education, what it actually means while you're saying something about what you do. So I'm going to really test your skills right now to recall. So I'm going to go in no particular order. Brian Curcio Rapunzel, Lynn McBee Young Women's Prep, it totally is in order. Chris Cooley-Worrell, Oakmont Education, Diana Diaz-Harrison, Arizona Autism, Mike Long, Sail Future. So let's start with Mike. Sail Future, why stop for education? What the heck does it mean?
Yeah, so for us, I came to education as a foster parent. I grew up and spent most of my childhood in the juvenile justice system. Most of you know that education in jail doesn't really work that well. So I got out of the system and became a foster parent so that the kids who grew up like me didn't have to have that experience. And as my kids went into the public school system and had their heads down and went to sleep and started getting suspended and expelled, the principal's responses to that were, "There's something wrong with your kid." I'm like, no, my kids are awesome. They're brilliant. You just can't figure out how to learn from their behaviors. So we started a school that would cater to their behaviors and needs, and believe it or not, they're excelling and thriving and becoming entrepreneurs and business owners and captains of yachts all over the world because we listened to what they need and took those behaviors as a form of communication rather than a problem.
Excellent. I'm going to skip to Lynn.
Well, for us, STOP means giving every girl in the state of Texas the opportunity to reach her fullest potential. Not having a girl wake up in the wrong zip code and realize that she can't achieve a college degree and she can't go on and be the best that she can be. It also means disrupting public education. 90% of kids go through the public education system. We are right there as the private partner in the public education system, pushing and challenging and in the work and in the tent and really making the outcomes work for our young women.
Awesome. Diana.
Before I knew what all the letters in the acronym meant, I just STOP really resonated with me because I'm an autism mom and I needed people to stop telling me what my kid can't do. I knew he could do a lot with the proper supports, facilitation, innovative schoolwork, and if he had the right to be creative. So before I knew what all the acronym meant, I just was right there with you and that what we were currently doing needed to stop. And my favorite of the STOP principles is permissionless. I can explain why later.
No, what's permissionless?
Permissionless is because when I said, we need a school that takes the gifts of kids with autism and uses them as a foundation for the kids to be involved in innovative work. I was told, you can't get the permission to do that. There's never been such a school. I said, oh yes, there has, in Florida. And the person that I used as an example, South Florida Autism Charter School, fueled me to prove what was possible. And so I was not asking for permission. I was demonstrating that this was a need. And the minute we opened our first school, it filled because other parents also wanted the traditional education system to stop saying what our kids couldn't do.
Awesome. Brian Curcio, Rapunzel, why stop and how are you stopping for education?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that, what stood out to me before even diving into the acronym was just the idea, this idea of stop. And like we've heard in the other panels, it's like the status quo isn't working. Rapunzel is a gamified financial literacy platform, and over 99% of executives in finance are white males. So it's kind of trying to figure out bringing diversity and kind of figuring out a more sustainable way that it isn't necessarily the idea of give a man a fish or teach a man to fish. It's like teaching kids about investing and the idea of building generational wealth. It becomes sustainable in that it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy if you teach people about investing and that their money matters, and just the power of being able to tell a student you will be successful one day, so let's figure out what you're going to do with your money. That was kind of the idea behind making it permissionless and having a platform that can reach any student, whether they're in the traditional public system or kind of homeschooled, microschool, that can access that platform.
And you just mentioned in your remarks sustainable. So tell us what sustainable is. You get to define the S.
Okay, perfect. So I think sustainable.
And if you fail, you're going home.
Yeah, this is it right here. I think sustainable is the idea of moving away from necessarily requiring philanthropy to fund the program. And I think that a lot of programs, you need the philanthropy and you kind of do need buy-in from just the general public supporting you. But this idea that I think throughout the accelerator we learned, like, think as an entrepreneur, think of you're running a school and that's a business and your parents are the customers. So this idea of creating programs that are providing value and then being able to tap into where that kind of value can provide the money that kind of makes everything happen.
You know, if we were in a regular grading class, but we're about competency education, I'd say A+ for the answer. But since we're in a competency-based education, I'd say highly exceptional. Okay, Chris, Oakmont Education. Why? How do you stop? And pick out one of the other two final letters to tell us what they mean for you.
Yeah, I just want to also thank the Yasses for this incredible opportunity and everybody here. But Oakmont Education, we take basically benched kids, dropouts, and we make them starters. We give them purpose and hope, and we kind of help change the narrative of how people see them. And I think that for me, the stop for us here at Oakmont, the status quo has accepted like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and that they've accepted that, and they've accepted like students, just like some kids aren't gonna make it. And like, I just don't know how that phrase comes out of people's mouth. Some kids, no, all kids are gonna make it. And until we start to say that, you know, and for me, this takes down that kind of bureaucratic tape that binds us for so many ways, because it allows us to say, you told us we couldn't meet dropout kids here, but I can tell you last year in Ohio, dropout kids out progress grew anybody else because they let us meet them where they were. And so this type of opportunity is transformative, so the T, in a way that is impactful beyond just the individual student. That student is now, like, it's just narrative changing. And when you just don't think of the student, you know, you think of, you're changing the narrative for kids with autism. You're changing the narrative for kids who've been in prison. I was a bad kid. I dropped out of school. You're changing the narrative for kids that are gonna one day sit up here and thank somebody else for giving them a transformative opportunity, and it's just incredible.
That's great. So Mike, let me ask you to talk about outstanding, because, and I'd like all of you to reflect on this and what you do. You're all doing things in very different ways. You're all delivering education in very unique ways, and you are in still a very standardized environment with state standards. And, you know, I'll never forget, I had someone call me once and be like, are you all supporting the blah, blah, blah standards? And I said, actually, it's not really in our focus point. They're like, how can you say that? So because it's standardized. Standards are supposed to be a goalpost, not standardized, but we're in a world that it is. So how do you break through so that everybody appreciates what it is to be outstanding in different ways? How educate us how we take it to the next level.
Yeah, so if you were to ask our students at the Seal Future Academy for like what our standards are, one of the things they would tell you is that in order to graduate, they have to sail on a 100-foot ship 2,000 miles from Florida to Trinidad. That's a standard, which is very different than Common Core. But because of that, they learn teamwork and leadership and engineering and all the skills that come with operating a 100-foot ship. One of the other things that they'll tell you is that in order to graduate from the Seal Future Academy, they have to write and launch a business plan that they then compete for real funding at the end of their 4th year. So our students in preparation for that are working in 5 different internships and apprenticeships during years 1 through 3. And on average, our kids earn about $20,000 in paid wages throughout their 4-year school experience. And so for us, when we think about standards and what outstanding actually looks like, it's rewriting how we credential. It's rewriting what we look at as the necessary skills for a young person to have when they leave high school, and thinking about what is actually going to prepare them to be an outstanding young person when they're walking off our stage with that diploma.
Such a broad way to think about it. Thank you, really. So I'm seeing that in the beginning of a clip that goes out to every state lawmaker and national and local in the country. Let's add to that, Diana. How do we add to that so that there's further understanding of outstanding?
When I heard what you were doing, I said, sign us up. Because the most memorable work that our kids do is exploratory and project-based, and it's showcasing interwoven skills that they present to the world. It's not a paper pencil test. People try to forget that. The most memorable work is what kids creatively produce as a team. And our kids on the spectrum don't get a lot of opportunities to do that. So outstanding for us is showing the families, the kids themselves, and the world at least every quarter a cooperative project that solves a problem. So now the kids say, yeah, I said, how did you come up with it? And they say, autism is my superpower. Yes.
Chris, jump in about outstanding. What's the way that you help your students, these young people who have coming to you with incredible challenges, to think above and beyond while you're still struggling in a state like Ohio running charter schools and they're telling you to check off 543 boxes?
Yeah, it feels like 15,000 boxes. We do have a good legislature that does support choice in Ohio currently. But I think with our students, we like being outstanding is giving them the safe space to understand that we're here for them. They've been let down a lot, and a lot of people have failed them. And I think often, instead of acknowledging that, people see them as a failure, and they don't understand that actually it's been the system and the people involved that have been the failures. And I think that the key to a lot of the populations of students that are marginalized that we all work with is kind of changing that narrative and flipping that of not being a failure, but saying this is a safe space, and failure is something to learn from. Like, if we didn't learn anything in Miami, it was that you reframe that problem, you look at that failure, and instead of saying, I am a failure, no, you failed, people have failed you, but this is how we're gonna turn it around, and making things relevant and pertinent to them provides them with what they need to go out and be involved in their community again, and stay and not be, in the prison system where 73% of people in prison are high school dropouts. I mean, that's a fact. If we, that's an actual, that's disturbing to me that we just allow that. And we don't do anything about it. We're like, let's build more prisons. I have a better idea that costs less money.
And Chris mentioned Miami for those who are wondering. That was the location of the in-person accelerator for the Yass Prize, the fourth of 4 weeks for the semifinalists. And one of the things that we talked about in Miami also is that all of the students are no longer, again, they're not in a box. They never were supposed to be. But even kids who bring moderate challenges to the classroom, maybe struggling with something happening in their world. Somebody may have committed suicide, which is an increasing and alarming, tragic thing that's happening. So it's not just income, race, et cetera. There's so many things flying, and instead of putting you guys in a box and then you putting other students in a box, I think what's been transformational is you being like, we run a great school. Like you don't start with, we've got all this downtrodden, give me your poor, your huddled masses, right? You start with, here's where we are. And so Lynn, you help run Young Women's Leadership, public education at its finest across the country for young women. Talk about how Texas, for example, in this case, views you, and how districts actually end up embracing you.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've been doing this for 20 years, and our schools, as you said, are some of the best in the nation. And it's been, hard, very deliberate work, because you can never predict what's going to happen in public education. Just when you think you can, it's insanity. And so it's being able to kind of adapt and meet those challenges and find solutions. So, we really have a very strong relationship with all of the districts that we partner with. And we partner with 10 different districts across the state. We are part of Schools of Innovation and Senate Bill 1882 funding, and so there is a small, piece of funding that we actually get that does support some of our work, but most of it's private philanthropy. We're the private partner to public education. So when we go in and we do our MOUs, we say, you public education are good at doing this, and we're going to take and we're going to invest, and we're going to take it to that next level. And so just for instance, hiring a principal. We're at the table. Our list of things that we expect from a principal who's going to be the leader of that school, that's going to drive all that change in school, set that college culture, get all of the family on board in 6th grade to go to college. That's got to be such a high bar. And so we have a whole nother layer of things that we expect. And so, when you start having these really great outcomes and the work is transformational, and the girls are going to college and they're coming back and they're staying in the community and the community's turning around, why would the district say no? I mean, and they do. They're like, please, come work with us. And, it's hard work, but it's amazing work.
But they have more flexibility in Texas to do that than a lot of states, right? And so even though there's no F and stop,
right?
There's F and a lot of other things, but there's not an F and stop. There's a flexibility is inherent in the permissionless and the transformational, right, and sustainable.
Correct. I mean, if you think about the legislation, it was a No Child Left Behind and it was Senator Kay Hutchinson. She's a Texas senator. It was Margaret Spellings, who was the education secretary. She's a Texan. And then, of course, George Bush is the one that signed it. And that was Head Start, but it was also the work that led to what we're able to do now. So you do have a lot of, folks in Texas that are like, we want to give choice, we want to give different opportunities. So yes, it's been a much more welcoming community, but there were years of lawsuits over this work too. So it has not been without a fight in that realm.
Right, because you weren't supposed to have single-sex schools,
Correct.
because somehow
Correct.
that was okay if you could pay $60,000 send your child to a private one,
Right.
but it wasn't okay if it was available publicly.
Correct.
And you endured. Amazing.
And our work has led to boys' schools being open. So it's been an inspiration for a lot of boys' schools around the state. So.
Right. Well, Janine and Jeff were co-founders of Boys Latin, the first public charter school for boys. And we don't have much time left, but I just remember that they try to keep them out too. All right, Brian, take us home on outstanding.
Yeah, so all I've been thinking about, and I got the timer saying we're almost up. It was early on in starting Rapunzel, I think like 2019, there was a teacher that told me that talent is ubiquitous. And this idea that like every student has the potential to be outstanding. They've had all these formative life experiences, and it's really our job as educators to guide them to outstanding. And I think my belief is that it's hooking students' curiosity. And whether it's using videos in the form of TikTok or kind of meeting students where they are or sailing 2,000 miles, it's like getting kids curious allows them to engage as active learners. And I think that's how you can ultimately kind of help every student be outstanding.
Well, I am so glad you all volunteered for this panel. This was so much fun. Thank you so much. And now we are at our final closing speaker. Diana, Chris, Lynn, Brian, Mike, thank you. Appreciate it.
To close out our program for today, Yass Prize founder Janine Yass.
Is this working? Working? I feel like I'm on The Voice. I've been watching The Voice. You guys are my Christmas dream come true. Oh, gosh, it's so great to be here in New York with all of you celebrating this event and the holiday season. Randall, I saw Randall earlier. He's somewhere in this room, but he's whited out. Randall insisted that we host this event here in the Forbes offices. I thought maybe a school would be more appropriate, or it might be more glamorous in the penthouse of the Hilton where we are. But Randall was right, because you guys are so above and beyond teachers and educators. You really are educational entrepreneurs, and it makes sense that you are in this building of Forbes magazine. nothing like any of the teachers I had or educational providers in my 25 years of education. You are also inspirational. During the accelerator, I did touch upon our journey of what brought us here to create the STOP Awards and the Yass Prize. I told you a little bit about seeing, classrooms with children completely bored and no teachers teaching, and it was just so unacceptable. And then looking at the outcomes, especially in poor urban and rural areas, again, it was just so unacceptable and so frustrating. The fight to bring more charter schools and schools of choice, again, it was just such a battle. Lots of scars from that. But what you guys all did, you just never stopped. You never stopped, despite the fact that the country's failing, despite the fact that COVID came around and shut down schools. You never took no for an answer. You just kept on going. And there's nothing more inspirational and more of an honor to support than the work that you guys are all doing in this room. Jeannie and I always said that, the start of this award was really during the days of COVID. We thought we have to do something positive for the educators in the country. And around the same time, I forget the actual date of the article, but I read an article by Robert Enlow, who's here in the room tonight from Ed Choice. And Robert's article was the aha moment. It was, Robert, you could tell us what date it was, but he wrote headline op-ed about permissionless schools in this country. And all of a sudden, it was like it ignited the feisty, naughty teens in Jeannie and I. We're like, we shouldn't have to ask permission for anything. Let's just go for this. Who cares what these adults in the room are saying? We want to do this. And that's what each and every one of you did. You looked at your children, you looked at the parents, what they needed. At the same time, in the country, they were barring parents from school board meetings. They weren't listening to parents or looking at what the kids were doing or wanting to do. So really, it's our honor to support this work because it really is a dream come true for us. And again, I don't want to insult you saying that you're all just a bunch of naughty teens doing this stuff on your own without permission, but just please keep it going. It's a tough phase, but we all love our teenagers. And I don't know what I want to say about going into tonight because as a mother of 4, everyone says, who's your favorite child? Who's your favorite? We all know if you have kids, you really can't pick a favorite child. So please know going into tonight that you're all my favorite children. And I love you each individually for all your strengths and weaknesses. And the most important thing for me is that after tonight, that you all stay close in touch and support each other for the rest of your career. So thanks for coming to New York. I can't wait for the party tonight.
This concludes our program. Semifinalists, the buses are outside. If you could please move as quickly as possible to the buses, we would greatly appreciate it.